DISOVERED. How one millionaire's amazing love healed a baby given just 3 months to live. James Thompson stared at the television, his heart sinking into a pit of despair as the news report unfolded. Baby Lily, the resident of their small town, lay in a hospital bed with tubes snaking around her frail body, a tiny angel fighting an unimaginable battle. 3 months left. The anchor's words echoed menacingly, each syllable twisting like a knife inside him. The image of Lily's family, broken, helpless, drowning in medical bills, burned into his mind, igniting a sense of urgency he had never felt before. How could this be happening just miles from where he built his empire? As a self-made millionaire, James had amassed wealth that turned heads and raised eyebrows. Yet this moment stripped him bare. Wealth felt like a burden in the face of human suffering. Lily's plight struck a chord deep within him. He recalled the Sunday dinners at home, with laughter echoing against the walls, the warmth of his family's hugs, and the lessons his father meticulously instilled: to work hard, to be kind, and above all, to help those in need. This baby, this family, didn't just need help. They needed a lifeline. In the days that followed, James reached out to Lily's family, quickly forming a connection that felt raw yet unyielding. As he sat at their kitchen table filled with the stench of sickness, the weight of despair palpable in the air, he heard stories about sleepless nights spent worrying over bills. He wanted to alleviate their pain, to somehow turn back the hands of time and protect them from this fate. But they had their own battles to fight, and he felt like an intruder, a potential savior wrapped in his luxury and privilege. Every visit deepened the chasm of his internal conflict. Was he truly doing this out of compassion or to cleanse his conscience? The comfort of his wealth countered the bitter truth. It couldn't erase this family's suffering or secure Lily's health. He became increasingly aware of the larger issue at play: the systemic failures that led to families drowning in medical debt, like anchors pulling them under. His anger surged, forcing him to confront unsettling questions. Who was he to step into this fight? Would he be seen as a hero or just another affluent man attempting to install decorum? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As he plotted a charity event aimed at raising funds and awareness. For families like Lily's, the judgment of others gnawed at him. Critique seeped through the community's fabric like poison. Some applauded his efforts, while others dismissed him, branding him as a wealthy man trying to placate his guilt. Each whisper infused him with an unsettling sense of isolation. Frustration twisted his stomach, prompting him to question his worth, his intentions, and the very definition of success. What if he failed? What if, in his quest to combat injustice, he only created a larger rift? Standing at the precipice of a pivotal meeting with powerful healthcare institutions, he felt both the weight of his privilege and the love of those who depended on him. Just as he was about to step into that room, a notification flashed on his phone. Lily's condition had deteriorated. Panic clawed at his throat, and anger mixed with despair surged within him. Every ounce of determination he had mustered now trembled precariously. Was it too late for Lily? Could his fight be in vain? Or could he still hold on to a flicker of hope amidst the chaos? The room around him blurred as he faced a daunting choice, feeling the universe tilt beneath him, leaving everything hanging in the balance. James inhaled sharply, the air suddenly thick with expectations, his own and those surrounding him. Tremors of uncertainty pulsed through him as he clutched his phone, wrestling with the weight of impending news. If this meeting was supposed to change lives, then why did his feel so precarious? Instead of clarity and purpose, he felt trapped in a labyrinth of doubt. The conference room was expansive, reflecting the sterile world of wealth and influence he was embroiled in. Executives lined the table, their polished exteriors belied by a stark absence of empathy. He had always thrived in such settings, wielding his business acumen with confidence. Yet today, the stakes were different. It wasn't a pitch. It dealt with life and death. The faces before him blurred, becoming mere silhouettes of hardened resolve, distant from the anguished plea he heard in Lily's mother's voice. He could visualize her tear-streaked face, haunted by lingering shadows of possible futures. How could I ask these people for help? A knot formed in his stomach. They were not just negotiating figures. They were deciding on destinies. An unsettling truth began to settle. James had to balance the delicate act of pleading for compassion while navigating a landscape riddled with financial jargon and self-interest. As the meeting commenced, James' resolve hardened, fueled by a growing determination. He steered the conversation towards the realities of families trapped in medical crises, faces he had come to know intimately through his visits. The numbers rolled off his tongue, yet they felt hollow without the emotional heft backing them. He tilted the narrative toward Lily, framing her story not merely a casualty of circumstance, but as a potential catalyst for change. But he received pushback, a clinical and moralistic suggestion. One executive proposed a philanthropic line for families like hers, a patchwork solution that would do little to address the systemic failures ingrained in the healthcare system. The suggestion felt like a slap in the face, triggering a surge from deep within. This wasn't just about compassion in the moment, it was a clarion call for reform. Caught between his visceral response and the polished professionalism expected of him, he chose to unleash the simmering frustration. "This isn't a mere transaction," he declared, punctuating his words with intensity. A mandate for compassion resonated from his core, compelling him to seek more than band-aid solutions. If we don't disrupt this system, countless more families will suffer in silence. Faced with this unexpected confrontation, he noticed a shift in the room, a subtle crack in their facade. Perhaps they felt it too. Perhaps they were human after all. Yet doubt lingered as he observed their expressions of discomfort. Fear gnawed at him. Trading on human vulnerability was dangerous territory. Would they appreciate this call to action as a plea from the heart, or dismiss it as the outburst of a wealthy man trying to appease his conscience? As the meeting progressed, the air thickened with tension. James recounted stories of other families battling with the same grim realities as Lily. He painted vivid pictures of despair, heartbreak, and the fleeting moments of joy dampened by the specter of financial ruin. The engine of capitalism could not be solely fueled by profit. It needed a human face. The discussions ended, the executives remaining non-committal. Still, he knew he had planted seeds of doubt in their minds. Though it felt small and tenuous, he sensed that the narrative was beginning to shift. He left their office with a mix of triumph and uncertainty, aware that he had sparked a flicker of change, however minimal. Yet a gnawing anxiety accompanied him back to his car. The dreaded notification had been a relentless specter. How would Lily's family respond now? Each day lost counted, for both their futures. That uncertainty loomed ominously, a reminder of the tangible outcome holding tight to his heart. As he sat in the vehicle, navigating the road ahead, doubts flickered through his mind. How much longer could Lily hold on? What if he was pushing for change too late? One name echoed in his conscience, propelling him forward: Lily. In that moment, he made a decision. He couldn't simply be a part of the story. He needed to drive it. But the fear of being silenced hung in the balance. The real question remained: how far could he stretch his influence before the walls started to close in? And was it not just the children like Lily at stake, but potentially his very own legacy? With these thoughts swirling in his mind, he steered his car toward the hospital, heart racing. This was only the beginning.
The stakes had been raised. Was he ready to face whatever challenges came next? The sterile scent of antiseptic greeted James as he entered the hospital.
A world wholly different from the polished veneer of the executive boardroom. Here, the stakes shifted from the abstract to the visceral. The reality of illness and despair enveloped him like a shroud. Each step toward Lily's room felt heavier, laden with expectation and responsibility. He paused to catch his breath, leaning against the cool wall. Was he prepared to confront not just the stark reality of her condition, but the potential ramifications of his prior meeting? He had pushed for a transformation in a system that prioritized profit over compassion, yet now, facing a tiny girl with an uncertain future, the doubts clawed at him, relentless in their insistence. The memory of that meeting looped in his mind. He had stepped on toes, opened wounds. Would that incite true change, or simply galvanize the establishment against him? What if they chose exclusion over inclusion, leaving him alone and powerless in the face of corporate indifference? As he approached the double doors of Lily's room, he felt his resolve wavering. Upon entering, the hum of machinery and the soft rustle of nurses provided a stark contrast to the tension he felt. There, cocooned in a tangle of tubes and warm blankets, was Lily, a fragile embodiment of hope against a formidable foe. Her frail hand reached out, the faintest gesture that tethered his swirling thoughts back to a grounded reality. "Hey there, little warrior," he whispered, kneeling by her side. The light faltering in her eyes seemed to challenge him. He felt a familiar rush of emotion swell. Anger surged against the system that had let Lily down, and an invigorating sense of purpose ignited within him. He had been swept into the whirlwind of activism, but it was Lily who transformed his motives into a mission. With each moment spent by her bedside, James confronted a profound revelation inside himself. This fight was personal. He was not merely advocating for equity in healthcare. He was becoming a voice for every child trapped in the dystopian framework of medical finance, a truth that redefined his narrative. The children weren't abstractions. They were living, breathing individuals, deserving of a chance. And if he failed, they would remain silenced. Armed with this newfound perspective, he straightened his back, fortifying his resolve. The simplicity of compassion could forge more than temporary changes. It could catalyze a revolution within the depths of a failing system. He could funnel resources and influence toward a transformative model where profit did not overshadow care. His plans solidified like ice over a flame. He would leverage his connections to gather others who believed in this mission. They would raise their collective clout to insist on necessary reforms. But he'd have to tread carefully. The revelations from the meeting had at once unveiled his determination, but also revealed his vulnerability. "Lily," he murmured, brushing a finger against her tiny hand, "I promise to fight for you. Not just as a wealthy businessman, but as someone who shares your plight. Together, we'll create a narrative that demands attention." The drive within him crystallized into a potent directive. Every moment counted. Yet the undertow of self-doubt still lurked nearby. Could he indeed forge a real change, or would his influence be swallowed whole by the very system he sought to challenge? His own legacy loomed ominously before him, a specter waiting to judge his actions. As he prepared to leave the room, a flash of inspiration ignited an audacious notion. What if he initiated a gathering, a forum where families could share their stories and collectively raise their voices? A safe space, not just for fans or allies, but for those brave enough to confront the behemoth of bureaucracy directly. Heart racing with the thrill of potential, he stepped outside, invigorated by a sense of urgency. But one question lingered like a distant thunderstorm. How would he ensure that his plans wouldn't be dismissed as the fervent dreams of one individual, but rather resonate as a collective heartbeat of change? And as the weight of this choice pressed upon him, he steeled himself for the road ahead. This wasn't just about financial negotiation.
It was a battle cry for humanity. The time had come to face the powerful beasts of the establishment. The question was, would they yield or fight back? James felt an electric pulse of determination surge through him as the idea of the forum began to crystallize. The notion of gathering families and giving them a platform was no longer mere inspiration. It had transformed into a blueprint for action. But an insistent voice nagged at him, cautioning him not to move too quickly. This wasn't just a business venture, it was personal. Every detail needed to reflect the dignity of those who had suffered in silence. He retreated to the hospital cafe, its ambiance starkly contrasting the gravity of Lily's predicament. The soft chatter of visitors, the clinking of coffee cups, and the faint background music amplified his sense of isolation. He found a seat in the back corner, tapping the edge of his cup as he stared into the murky depths. How on earth could he convince those families to share their stories, to lay bare their vulnerability? He felt the weight of responsibility pressing down, almost suffocating. As he sipped his coffee, he began strategizing, mentally chalking out a plan that could empower rather than exploit. First, he decided he needed to establish credibility, a figurehead who could echo the mission's authenticity. Whether it was a respected doctor who understood the systemic shortcomings or a parent whose child had endured the struggles of the healthcare system, he would need someone who could lend weight to the cause. The lens of personal experience carried unparalleled power. His thoughts danced around potential collaborators when he recalled Samantha, a doctor and an advocate for pediatric care reform. They had worked together on small initiatives in the past, but now this felt different. Reaching out to her would be a pivotal move, depending on her willingness to involve herself in a mission that could rock the foundations of the system they both criticized. Finishing his coffee, he felt a sense of urgency build within him. He needed to be direct and honest with her about the stakes involved. But more importantly, he had to be prepared for the possibility she might refuse. Doubt clambered up his spine, intertwining with the burgeoning excitement of anticipation. "I have to believe that she will see my vision," he reassured himself as he exited the cafe, resolving to give her a call later that day. It was crucial, however, that he approached her with respect, understanding that asking her to join him in this fight was a considerable request. As he walked through the sterile halls of the hospital on his way out, he was met with fragments of conversations, snippets of lives caught in vulnerability. A nurse gently consoled a parent. 2 children laughed softly in a waiting area while their mother tried to comfort them. Every moment and expression reminded him that the essence of healthcare was humanity, something the bureaucratic system often overlooked. It struck him that this wasn't merely about a gathering, it was about making an indelible impact on those who felt voiceless and powerless. He had lived amid the wealth and privilege that the corporate world offered, but he had forgotten the raw power of shared stories. Suddenly, he found himself walking toward the hospital's pediatric ward. He took a deep breath before entering the bustling corridor filled with anxious parents and busy medical staff. He knew he needed to connect with the families who were fighting their own battles. But the prospect of facing those struggles head-on felt daunting, yet essential. Just as he turned a corner, a name reverberated through his mind. Harrison, a friend and journalist whose investigative pieces had spotlighted healthcare injustices in the past. Could he convince Harrison to document the forum? If they could capture the heart-wrenching stories, they could drive home the urgency of the need for reform. With newfound resolve, James texted Harrison, carefully crafting a message that was both earnest and compelling. The prospect of capturing stories on video was ambitious. Maybe, just maybe, it could help people understand the depth of suffering hidden behind sharp statistics and clinical jargon. But as the message was sent, a flicker of hesitation blossomed within him. Would he be able to bear the weight of such personal stories? In seeking to empower others, was he prepared to open the floodgates to their anguish, knowing he couldn't erase the pain? As he left the hospital, the air felt charged with possibilities, yet a shadow of uncertainty loomed. He was on the cusp of something monumental, but what would it cost? Would he be able to shoulder the responsibility of tales that were too painful to tell? The next chapter of his journey awaited, fraught with peril, but with the promise of healing through vulnerability, a challenge he was both eager and anxious to embrace. As James navigated the labyrinth of the hospital's corridors, his heart raced with anticipation and fear. Each step was imbued with the weight of his mission. He couldn't shake the unease that churned inside him. The kaleidoscope of stories he envisioned bringing to light bore the potential for both profound impact and profound pain. Could he truly handle the raw emotions that might surface? Was he equipped to help those families navigate the unfathomable depths of their grief? Determined to quell his apprehension, James shifted his focus to the forthcoming conversation with Samantha. Their previous collaborations had skimmed the surface, but this endeavor demanded a more profound trust, a sincerity that transcended professional camaraderie. She had always displayed a fierce dedication to the families she served, championing their causes with compelling tenacity. He hoped that her voice would add credibility to his vision. Finally stepping outside, the sun felt harsh against his skin, illuminating the doubts lurking in the back of his mind. He sat on a bench, grappling with the thoughts that tumbled inside his head. Was he merely an intruder on deeply personal journeys? The damage from tokenizing pain loomed large. Every moment he spent in this burgeoning role needed to respect the delicate nature of vulnerability. James pulled out his phone, fingers hovering over the screen as he began typing a message to Samantha. "Hey, can we meet? I want to discuss an idea I have that could really make a difference for families in our healthcare system." He paused, chewing his lip. Perhaps diving in too quickly would overwhelm her. He took a deep breath and added more context, emphasizing the collaborative spirit and intention that rooted his mission in authenticity. With a heavy thumb, he pressed send and felt a jolt of anxiety surge through him. The implications of this outreach weighed heavily on his mind. While he sought to empower and enlighten, he was stepping into the realm of lives forever altered by loss and hardship. The notion of asking others to share their suffering, no matter how noble the aim, felt like a steep hill to climb. As he waited for a response, he recalled Harrison's message, briefly accessed his thoughts on vulnerability, and then snapped back to his own. Would he have the courage to face the emotional tide that might wash over him when the stories came to life? He resolved to remind himself that the core objective was to create a platform that dignified those voices, not to exploit them for attention. Just then, James's phone vibrated with a reply from Samantha. "Sure, I'd love to catch up. What's the idea?" The simplicity of her words breathed renewed hope into his chest. It wasn't confirmation, but it was an opening, a door in the realm of possibility. James took a moment before replying, allowing a brief smile to escape. To have the opportunity to persuade someone of Samantha's caliber meant he might be onto something significant. He promptly proposed they meet at the hospital cafe, a neutral ground where they could converse soberly about the initiative and gauge the interest he hoped to ignite. The hour that followed felt like an eternity as he prepared for the meeting, anxiously juggling potential dialogue in his mind, recalling each statistic he planned to share. Yet, lurking beneath the surface was a fundamental fear. What if she connected him to something he wasn't ready to confront? What if something in their past interactions haunted the present? Arriving at the cafe, he ordered coffee that he hardly tasted, too busy rehearsing the words he so desperately wanted to articulate. Would she understand the vulnerability he was trying to embrace and amplify? Could he navigate their rolling history while framing this pivotal moment? The ringing of the doorbell signaling another customer's entry pulled him from his anxious spiraling. He caught his breath as he steeled himself for the conversation ahead. This meeting could very well shape the moral framework they built together. Then he saw her, stepping through the door with her grounded energy. He couldn't ignore the pang of recognition, a memory of their past efforts together. As their eyes locked, the weight of shared purpose hung in the air, loaded with both promise and potential entanglement. This was it, his moment to test his resolve. "Hi, Samantha," he said as she approached, heart racing, knowing he stood on the precipice of a defining conversation. But just as he began to speak, he felt a sudden shift in the atmosphere, an unexpected tension. What if this would not lead to the validation he sought, but open a wound long kept in silence? The truth about their intertwined lives was poised to unravel, and he braced for the awakening of something he had yet to understand. James fought against the rising tide of uncertainty in his chest, keeping his voice steady as they exchanged pleasantries. Samantha's presence sparked a mix of nostalgia and apprehension in him. He had seen her passion ignite in every interaction with families, proclaiming their stories through the chaos of hospital life. Her success was driven by a deep empathy that often caused him to question his own motivations. Did he possess the same profound commitment? "James," she prompted, breaking through his internal dialogue, "you seemed excited in your message. What idea do you have?" Her smile was genuine, but he noticed a flicker of expectation behind her warm brown eyes, urging him to share his vision. He took a measured breath, mentally gathering his thoughts. "I think we need to create a platform, something that allows families to share their journeys in a structured yet sensitive way. A space where their voices matter, where grief doesn't have to be bottled up." As he spoke, he realized he had been framing his idea around the family's experiences without first examining his purpose for pursuing it. What right did he have to dictate how their grief was expressed? He paused, scanning Samantha's expression. She leaned forward slightly, intrigued, but he sensed an undercurrent of skepticism. "What will be different about this platform?" she questioned, her tone thoughtful yet deliberate. "We both know many people have approached this topic. How is your vision unique?" James's stomach nodded. He could feel an invisible wall between them. He had to dig deeper into his convictions to clarify what made him worthy of this task. To be vulnerable in this moment, like the families he wanted to serve, required an honesty he had yet to confront. "I realize that sharing pain risks trivializing it. But what I envision is a way to honor their experiences, allowing families to articulate their grief on their terms, not just through clinical language or awkward interviews. It's about respect, about dignity." Samantha nodded slowly, weighing his words. Yet he could tell she wasn't fully convinced. Her silence tugged at something deep within him. Was he only reflecting a fantasy that made him feel like a savior? The starker reality of his intentions cut through his bravado. He had been uncomfortable admitting that he required their pain to fuel his ambition as a storyteller. "What made you want to take this on, James?" she asked, her question packed with intent. It was the very answer he dreaded to speak aloud. He hesitated, as if afraid the truth would shatter the fragile momentum they were building. "I grew up surrounded by loss in my own family. It's complicated, but I understood what it felt like to be caught between wanting to scream and wanting to be invisible. I thought if I could provide a space for others, maybe I, in turn, find clarity for myself." Even as he spoke, the weight of his self-serving impulses gnawed at him. Was he ready to lead such an initiative, knowing his motivations might be tainted? James observed Samantha's expression shift from curiosity to something else, recognition, perhaps, of the flaws in his reasoning. "It seems you're trying to process your own grief through theirs," she noted. Her words felt like ice water splashed against his face, awakening the defensiveness within him. "Maybe," he conceded, "but isn't that what we do as humans? We grapple with our narratives constantly. If I'm honest, the struggle feels familiar. I want to ensure their stories can emerge without suffering opacity, something they control." As the conversation unfolded, tension braided between them, unraveling the past they'd shared as colleagues. Memories of laughter and easy exchanges felt saccharine against the starkness of their current discussion. Could James confront the truth that was his inheritance but had spent years suppressing? Samantha paused, leaning back slightly as she processed the admission. "I can't tell you how often I've wrestled with similar feelings. It's vital we connect our personal narratives with the families we serve. But caution is essential too. If we step too far into the emotional realm without clarity, we risk not just our own stability, but theirs. For the first time, James could
almost see the layers of vulnerability unfold between them, frail but potent. Both were perched on the brink of deeper truths. Yet the realization stirred up a deep conflict. Was he ready for the associated ethical quagmire? More importantly, if he couldn't resolve his motivations, how could he guide others through their pain? Their conversation transformed from an exchange into a reckoning, revealing the ways their lives intertwined and the stories yet to unfold. Just then, he caught a glimpse of something in Samantha's eyes, a challenge, a warning, or perhaps an invitation for him to dig deeper. "James," she leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper, "the time has come for you to face those demons. What if they're part of your narrative just as much as theirs? Are you ready for that possible journey?" As those words hung heavy in the air, he realized he stood at a precipice of his own making, about to confront emotions he had largely ignored. Though the door to healing had opened, he wondered if he possessed the strength to walk through it. With that uncertainty coiling around him, he took a breath, aware this meeting might lead down a path he never anticipated, one not solely about sharing others' stories, but revealing his own. And just as he resolved to engage fully with this profound exploration, the cafe's atmosphere shifted once again, as a paramedic rushed in, a worried look on his face. "We've got a situation on our hands, urgent." In an instant, their conversation transformed from introspection to immediate urgency. What kind of path lay before him next? James's heart raced as he turned to the paramedic, the sudden shift in atmosphere jolting him from his introspective haze. The frantic energy of the cafe pulsed through him, constricting his chest as the paramedic's words sank in. "What happened?" he asked, his voice steady despite the rising panic within. The paramedic, clearly out of breath, looked first at Samantha, then back at James. "A child, local to this area, had a sudden crisis. They need immediate medical attention, and the family's on their way here." In that moment, the urgency snapped James out of his self-doubt and into a state of focused action. He could help, he realized. This wasn't about his internal struggle. This was about real people, real lives, and he was already in the perfect place to act. Samantha exchanged a quick look with him, a silent agreement. "Let's go straighten things out," she said, her voice filled with resolve. He nodded and followed her outside, where the air felt charged with urgency. As they stepped into the sun, James caught the first glimpse of the family's car speeding toward the entrance. Time felt distorted, every second stretched as if the world held its breath. His overwhelmed thoughts began to shift, anchoring down into something practical and actionable. He would not be paralyzed by introspection anymore. Rather, he could shape those feelings into something meaningful. While they awaited the family's arrival, he couldn't shake the feeling that the impending encounter was tied to his recent reflections. Was this moment calling him to confront his fears? Could the struggles he had shared with Samantha from within the safety of their cafe now propel him to a deeper understanding of his mission? Then, in a flurry of movement, the car screeched to a halt. The door flung open, and a woman jumped out, her face a mask of worry. A man followed closely behind, cradling a small girl in his arms. James's heart clenched at the sight, seeing the child's pale face, her fragile frame, and the frantic movements of the adults around her. "Please, please," the woman cried, her voice sharp with desperation. "She needs help." Without thinking, James stepped forward, absorbing the gravity of the moment. He placed a reassuring hand on the woman's arm, maintaining eye contact. "We're here for you. Let's get her inside and to a doctor," he said, trying to redirect her fear into something actionable. As they moved into the cafe, James felt an inexplicable pull towards the child.
Each step he took resonated with the understanding that this was not just a crisis for the family, but a key moment of clarity for himself. He wanted to believe that empathy, true empathy, could unearth strength amid anguish. Inside, a small gathering of staff members was already coordinating care. The paramedic quickly joined them, assessing the child while the family huddled nearby, looking lost in their fear. James could see the flicker of determination in Samantha's eyes as she took charge of the situation, directing additional staff with the no-nonsense clarity that had always drawn him to her. Overwhelmed yet driven, James moved closer to the child and her parents, absorbing the palpable connection of agonizing love and desperate hope they shared. He realized then that his past, his struggles, and even his motivations had led him straight to this moment, a moment that was larger than his own narrative. What if finding his place in this world meant standing alongside others in their own trials? The uncomfortable musings about his intentions began to transform into a profound understanding that pain could be shared, and healing was not only about personal grief. It could be about collective growth, fostering connections that spanned beyond struggles. A nurse appeared, and James directed the anxious parents to follow her. He stayed a step behind, monitoring Sam's poised movements as she comforted the family with her practical kindness. He longed to express his empathy, to share the importance of their stories, but for now he understood that actions spoke louder than thoughts. As chaos gave way to the rhythm of care, a sudden clarity washed over him. In helping those in distress, he wasn't just working out his own issues, he was discovering the potential power of every shared narrative. Each step forward felt like a commitment to both his vision and the pain that had preceded it. But just as James thought he
had grasped the essence of his journey, a nurse burst into the back offices, eyes wide with urgency as she shouted, "We need someone to help with the equipment. Things are getting critical." Without a hint of hesitation, James felt the call echo through his body. "I'm in," he announced, ready to step into the fray once more, prepared to uncover not only the stories of others, but also the story he was meant to tell. As he sprinted towards the back, a sudden realization gripped him. What if this immediate challenge not only tested his resolve, but also unveiled the truths he had been fighting to face? The time had come for an even deeper confrontation, and in that he felt the thrill of purpose merge with the weight of responsibility he was finally ready to confront. As James dashed to the back room, the fluorescent lights flickered overhead, amplifying the frantic desire curling in his stomach. He needed to be effective, not just present. Each passing second brought forward the raw urgency of the situation, and yet each pulse of adrenaline grounded him deeper. His internal dialogue shifted from uncertainty to an overpowering sense of duty. The child needed help, and he was not going to let his past fears grip him now. He pushed through the door and saw chaos unfolding. Medical equipment lay scattered on the counters, and in the corner, a nurse struggled with an oxygen tank that had stubbornly refused to cooperate. Instead of allowing the overwhelming noise to clam up his thoughts, his focus sharpened when he surveyed the scene. There was a systematic approach needed, a calm amidst the storm. "Here, let me help," James volunteered, raising his hands in a gesture of solidarity. The nurse looked momentarily surprised, but shifted back to her task. "We need to get this working fast. She'll suffocate without the oxygen." He stepped closer, heart racing as he reached for the loose tubing. "Okay, talk me through it," he said, locking eyes with her. Her brief nod encouraged him. "Unclamp the valve and push the lever down hard. Make sure it's locked in securely." James could feel the pressure mounting in the air. With shaky hands, he unclamped the valve, following her instructions and ensuring each action was deliberate. The nurse guided him through the sequence, and without thinking, he slipped into a state of focused effort. The initial anxiety melted away as he now felt in control. "Perfect, now check the gauge," she ordered, and he quickly did, relief flooding him when the green light clicked on. The nurse didn't give him praise.
Her attention was already shifting back, whisking away to coordinates and priorities that were far beyond what James could fathom. But that brief moment of accomplishment held a weight. He had contributed, however small, to navigating a critical moment. It wasn't merely fixing equipment, it was life and death, and he belonged to that process. He inhaled sharply, watching as the nurse ran off.
Gather supplies. The realization struck his professional worth had been tied to his own internal battles, reservations, and doubts. But in this high-stakes environment, surrounded by urgent cries and the trembling hearts of the family, he found clarity. His experiences had not been weaknesses, but rather pieces that could fit into a greater machine, moments shaped by resilience and empathy. Suddenly, the urgency intensified as another nurse rushed through the door, her voice slicing through the chaos. "We need more support in the recovery room. Grab an IV kit, now!" James's determination mounted. "I'll get it." He turned sharply, racing towards the supply station, and felt a swell of purpose. There was a voice inside him, a command urging him to keep going, to push through whatever fears still lingered. He grabbed the necessary components and headed toward the recovery room, marching through the hasty calls of his coworkers, now moving with fluidity. Approaching the recovery room, he found the scene charged with emotion. The parents were behind a curtain, listening to the frantic chatter of medical professionals swarming around the child. James's pulse quickened as the weight of their anguish descended heavily on him. Their pain mirrored something deep within him, awakening emotions long buried. He set the IV kit on the nearest counter. His heart pounded harder, his breath quickened. How could he reassure them when his own uncertainties bubbled just beneath the surface? What right did he have to reach out, knowing his own story was marred by unresolved fear? But then a resolute thought pierced through. It was no longer about him. Determined, he stepped up to the parents, maintaining a comforting yet respectful distance. "I'm here to help," he said softly. "We're doing everything we can for your daughter." Courage surged within him. In recognizing their struggle, he understood he held the power to diffuse their anxieties through presence, through belonging. Just as he had begun to comprehend the strength derived from his actions, a commotion erupted at the entrance. The paramedic from earlier barreled in, his face stricken with urgency. "We've got supplies coming in, but wait, where's the backup team?" The weight of impending tasks loomed as James felt the energy shift. What new challenges awaited him? Was he truly prepared to take on the next step? The moment of truth might unfold any second, and he was on the brink of discovery, ready to confront the reality of what his newfound purpose called for. Would he rise to the occasion or falter amidst the escalating demands? The air thickened with suspense as he steeled himself for whatever lay ahead. The moment the paramedic's urgent voice cut through the chaos, James's mind raced. What backup team? Who was meant to support the operation? He had assumed he was riding the momentum of action, but now a nagging apprehension seeped in. Could he truly handle the demands of the unfolding situation? He turned swiftly, eyes scanning the room. The frenzy felt magnified, and his previous confidence felt like a whisper against the torrent. Yet, beneath the rising tide of anxiety, the buoy of his earlier clarity remained. He had already contributed. He could do it again. Rallying himself, James pushed through. To resolve the uncertainty casting shadows on his determination, focus became his anchor. Every detail mattered now. He caught sight of a medical assistant, her hands wrestling with another supply cart. "What do you need?" he asked, his voice firm despite the fluttering in his chest. She looked up, grateful but distracted. "We're out of sterile gloves and some additional IV bags." It was a barrage of requests, but the looming task was painted on the wall behind her, urgency trending as a copious flow. "Got it," James replied, moving instinctively. He grabbed a pack of gloves, mindful of quick movements.
The physical task invigorated his resolve, each action a brick laid in the fortifying wall of his purpose. As he turned again, he spotted another medical professional dealing with paperwork, furiously scribbling notes. "Can you get help with that?" he asked, bewildered by the weight of the multitude of responsibilities unfurling. The nurse shook her head fiercely. "Not now. I need the medications verified first. No one is in the loop." James felt the pressure of it all constrict around him, but instinctively he sought calmness, following the deep breaths he had learned to take. "I'll help you organize the medications," he offered, as his own irritation began to bubble. Here was an opportunity, a way to lift the burden off her shoulders and his own. Amidst the relentless pace, they worked through the labyrinth of supplies, gathering the needed items and creating order from chaos. Every time he retrieved a vial or confirmed a dosage, he felt a growth. He was no longer just a bystander. He was part of the heartbeat of this place, breathing vigor into the straightforward tasks that held immense weight. Nobody had told him that professionalism, designed in urgency, could also carry depth. He recognized that by pouring forth his effort, he was also pouring into himself. Every challenge offered a lesson, demanding his resilience in ways he had not anticipated. Outside the recovery room, the parents waited, ever distant yet ever present. Their anguish was a tide pulling at his heartstrings once again. He was struck by their silent intensity. The parents not only feared for their child, but were in the throes of wrestling with helplessness. "Let's take a breath," he echoed internally, recalling the steps he had used in calming turbulence within his own psyche. They need to feel hope. Reaching out with a subtle smile as he returned to greet the agonized figures, James said, "We are working as fast as we can. Your daughter is receiving the best care." Fighting down the swell of personal emotion, he stood by their side, even when the chaos continued, grounding himself in their shared humanity. The sudden ferocity of age-old fears threatened to resurge, yet swaying between the struggle of vulnerability,
immense commitment, he found a sweet spot in reassurance. Just when energy began to settle into a rhythm, an alert echoed through the intercom. "Code Blue in the pediatric ward. Repeat, Code Blue." The call swept through the room like a relentless tsunami, crashing against his newfound confidence. There was yet another challenge laid at his feet, an unyielding demand that jolted his core. Would he have the strength to dive in once again? How far could he push his limitations in this spiral of urgency? Questions loomed like storm clouds, ready to break. This was a defining moment, one that could reshape everything he thought he knew about resilience and vulnerability. Would he step up, or would he let fear take the stage? James's heart raced at the announcement. The gravity of Code Blue resonated through him, a clarion call of urgency that sent adrenaline flooding his veins. Every instinct screamed for action, yet flickers of doubt crept in. Could he rise to this occasion? Was he truly capable of navigating the complex demands required within this chaos? The previous moments he'd spent grappling with his identity and worth felt like distant echoes now. This wasn't about him anymore. It was about the little girl and her family. The stakes had shifted entirely. The narrative was no longer just his redemption, but a collective fight for life. As the emergency team surged past him, he instinctively fell into step, his purpose crystallizing. Adrenaline sharpened his focus, and fear became a distant memory buried beneath the weight of determination. Entrusting his fear to the urgency around him, he found clarity. The moment was no longer about introspection. It was about collaboration in the face of despair. Pushing through the doors, the scene felt more intense than before. The room was a cacophony of voices, orders, and mechanical beeps, an intricate dance of medical personnel converging on a greater objective. He was all at once both an outsider and an insider,
uniting the two worlds he had inhabited. The awareness proved liberating. He had studied the nuances of corporate meetings and faced the harsh realities of healthcare, and now he sought to merge those perspectives for the sake of those in need. "IV fluids," a nurse shouted as she wheeled in a cardiac monitor. James darted to retrieve the necessary supplies. In those seconds, he was no longer merely a businessman. He was an active participant in a life-or-death struggle. His hands moved deftly, driven by an unfamiliar but invigorating urgency. Suddenly, amid the heightened tension, he caught sight of a familiar face, a respiratory therapist he had met earlier in the day. "We need another set of hands for compressions," she called to him, urgency palpable in her voice. Without hesitation, James stepped forward, accepting the grim responsibility. His heart pounded fiercely as he joined the group encircling the small patient, feeling the weight of their collective effort rise and fall. With each compress, determination united him with the team, and alongside it, an understanding began
to blossom within him. He was learning resilience in the truest sense. He had moved from mere reflection to active engagement. As they battled against time, each compress became a conduit of his intent. He felt the rhythm of life, a heartbeat, a pulse. If he had doubted the capacity of one individual to foster change, he was drumming hope into flesh and blood, weaving threads of empathy into a cohesive unit supporting one vulnerable life. After what felt like an eternity of coordinated effort, a whisper of progress flickered. Her heartbeat returned. A collective sigh of relief surged through the room like an undercurrent, and James felt it shake him to the core. He had learned that collaboration transcended positional power or wealth. It was rooted in shared humanity. Finally, as they stabilized the child and the immediate crisis ebbed, the energy shifted again. The tension transformed into unified spirit, where everyone uncoiled their stress, breathing collectively in the wake of adversity. In that transformative moment, he truly grasped the essence of his journey: acceptance of vulnerability, camaraderie forged in struggle, and triumph shared among strangers. Stepping away, but still within the fringes of the medical team, a wave of humility washed over him. He was one piece in a mosaic far more intricate than he had once envisioned. No position or title could replace the shared humanity they had all engaged in. Every heartfelt endeavor, every story shared, and every struggle became part of the fabric that bound them together. Amidst the exhaustion, his eyes locked onto the two still waiting parents in the recovery room. Walking toward them and kneeling down, he felt the comfort of vulnerability settle upon him. "Your daughter is stable for now," he spoke softly, wrapping his compassionate intent in each word. And in that moment, he found not only his voice, but the purpose he sought: to merge experiences of struggle and triumph, fueling the necessary dialogues in healthcare reform. With the parents nodding, the gravity of James's journey illuminated another truth. He had started this venture to resolve his own conflicts, yet he now unequivocally understood that empowering others was more potent than seeking personal redemption. It wasn't about casting a shadow over their narratives, but rather amplifying them, ensuring that they navigated their own journeys while nurturing hope. Emerging from that room, he turned to see Samantha watching him. A gentle smile of acknowledgement crossed her face. She had witnessed his transformation, and he was no longer a man searching for his place in this fight. He was a determined ally who recognized their shared responsibility. Just then, the reality struck him in waves, crashing against the shore of his understanding. With tangible achievements behind him, he was ready to take the next step towards advocacy. The doubts that had once gripped him now felt impotent. He had finally gathered the drive to initiate the forum he envisioned. James could feel the path forward spread out before him, grounded in authenticity. He had achieved something
greater, solid confidence in his place within this world, not as a wealthy savior, but as an empathetic participant in an ongoing struggle. He understood now that to transform the system, he needed to champion more than just his mission.
He was committed to sharing the stories that needed telling. Stories of struggle, resilience, and ultimately hope. As he stepped outside the hospital, the sky stretched vast overhead, mirroring the possibility that lay ahead. He was ready to empower the regular voices, those who endured the realities of caregiving, minimizing bureaucratic invisibility. Determined, he had built the foundation for his advocacy, an indelible nexus of shared stories destined to propel meaningful change. Now more than ever, he was ready to drive that narrative forward. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.